I was on a train going from Chicago to Albany back in the mid-90s. I was returning from seeing some friends, a married couple I knew who were from this area but relocated to Chicago when they got married. It was this time of the year, and I'd only been ordained about 2 years, had a little break before Christmas. Well, as we're heading back east on the night train there, from Chicago to Albany, when the train is pulling into South Bend, a lot of students from Notre Dame and from St. Mary's College got on the train. It was the end of the semester, finals were over, and the college students some of them were on their way home, heading to Points East in the night train. Well, once the train got underway, a number of them made their way to the dining car. Several brought along musical instruments. There was a little Christmas concert going on back there. First, there were some standards, the kind of music you hear on the car radio that you've been driving around with for the last several weeks. Then, they got into some sacred music. We have a rich patrimony of Advent and Christmas hymns that kind of keep our hearts full of these seasons. I'll bet they were playing for about 2.5 hours on the train. But it's interesting. Between the different pieces they were playing, they were quiet. There's no talk, no applause, no encouragement. They were just playing. Once they finished, they kind of went back to their seats all through the train where they'd gotten on, whether they're traveling alone or with little clutches of friends. Saw how they were beaming. I thought, well, it's the end of the semester. Maybe they're relieved from getting done with finals and everything. But you know what? What it really looked like, they had enjoyed this very deep and prayerful encounter with the music from the Advent season and the hint of Christmas to come. I had gone back to the dining car out of curiosity. At that point, what's on the dining car? Hey, got a can of Diet Coke and a bag of pretzels. Hey, I live large when I travel on the train. But I was chatting with the conductor. I like to kind of just talk to folks along the way when I'm traveling. And this particular conductor had been with Amtrak for a number of years. He said he always liked the Lakeshore Limited eastbound that time of the year because the college kids were getting on different nights, finishing their finals and heading home going east. He always liked the music. He said the dining car always becomes a little concert hall. And it's interesting, every year the train leaves South Bend, it's filled with music before it becomes a silent night. Thinking, wow, this is really special. Just letting this music of the season speak to our hearts and souls, shaping and forming us. It's a really nice Advent experience. But the train's kind of hanging through the darkness, going east and kind of going through Indiana and Ohio. And you're watching through windows when you come to the stations. And college students, they get up in small groups and they get off at different towns. And they're met by families or they're met by boyfriends and girlfriends at the station. Being met by people who know them, who love them, who've been waiting for them and longing for them, who would never forget them. And you think about those countless stories of the students connecting with friends and family as they get off the train, Toledo, Cleveland, Erie, Buffalo, Rochester. You get the idea. And then, how can I say this? In Ravenna, we hear trains, don't we? Hear that whistle or that horn as the train travels through town. Think of all those small towns between here and Chicago where the train doesn't stop but you hear the whistle in the night. That call. The call says different things to different people. What's God saying to us? How about now? We've got this is our last weekend in Advent. What are the Sunday readings saying to us? Well, think about those deeply personal encounters, like the Notre Dame and St. Mary students had on the train, the deeply personal encounters between God and God's people, between a God who knows us, knows our stories, knows the details of our lives very intimately, and God's people, a people who, especially at this time of the year, long for the Lord. In our first reading tonight, the prophet Micah, you can taste the prophet's hunger for a king who doesn't rule like a king, but rules like a true shepherd. A king who will bring peace to the people, to all ends of the earth. I don't think it's lost on us that the Messiah's origin is going to come from a small, kind of insignificant little town with Bethlehem. David, the king, comes from that town too. But Bethlehem's thought of as a little bit of a backwoods kind of town. But God calls to us. God knows our longings. And God knows how we want to respond to the calls that come night and day and night. God can, and God often does, use the smallest, seemingly the least among us, to fulfill the divine plan. Another deeply spiritual encounter between God and God's people that sometimes comes as a call in the night. What's it say to you and me? In the gospel tonight, Luke uses two first-century women living in an out-of-the-way place. They're not well known by everybody. They don't have much status or prominence. Certainly they're not among the powerful. Yet they're the ones who are such an important part of the story about how the Messiah comes into the world. A woman who is with child by far from normal means goes to visit an elderly aunt who is with child seemingly in an impossible way. We have the mother of Jesus and the mother of John the Baptist who get together. Both rejoice in God's Spirit at work in them for the salvation of all. A God who knows the ways of God's people, who knows Mary and Elizabeth, who knows us in every way, would never forget us, puts the coming of the Messiah into motion and makes the Messiah flesh, makes the Messiah incarnate by drawing on the gifts of these two women who say yes. It's another deep encounter between God and God's people, one that changes everything, makes all things new, as they say with the coming of the Messiah, makes all things new. What about you? What about us? In this last week, between the fourth Sunday of Advent and the coming of the Incarnation, the Christmas event we have, I'll bet you're busy. Got things going on. Now, to pile on one more thing, we might have a little snow to shovel tomorrow. We might. But nonetheless, with everything going on, do we still have time to listen to God's music, talking to our hearts and souls? Just like that train you hear, the whistle or the horn, late at night. What does that say to you? When God calls us, in the brightness of the day or the depth of the night, what's it say to us? What's it say to you? What's it say to me? Can we let God's beautiful music call out to us these last few days? Can we hold on to that one more encounter with God? What is God asking you to do? What is God asking you to bring about? Living around here, we hear the sounds of the trains all throughout the day and night. God sometimes calls over and over again. What's our response going to be?